So, what is access concentration? This is the question I want to bring forward in this talk. And I recorded something for this many years ago now, to how many, uh, in which I was working on a project that was kind of like a secular meditation style app. Basically, that's my whole career is doing these kinds of things. And this was a project called Meditate.io. And we had a course. It was called concentration meditation. And we wanted to explain the basics of concentration here. Like how does concentration really work? This course lives on in the Jhana community, actually, under the concentration 101. That's the name of the course here. So, very good fundamental ideas. And one of them is the idea of access concentration. And I felt like that was so useful in my experience of working with it in the Buddhist meditative context that I really wanted to bring it forward into the secular context and share it in a way that was more secularized. So there's a YouTube clip out here which basically gives my best simple overall definition of what access concentration is. And I'm not going to go into depth here because that already recording exists. That's the beauty of recording something. You don't have to necessarily repeat yourself over and over. This is how I formulate it for myself is like, I'm in access concentration when the subject of my focus, whatever it is, whether it's the breath or the body or something I'm hearing or a visual orb or a mantra, whatever object it is, when that becomes the center of my attention, it flips into the foreground of my attention and everything else goes into the background. It's not that it disappears, not that there's no distractions or thoughts or anything else happening. It's just that now it's those things are happening in the background and this is in the foreground of my attention. And this is a really important shift in the practice where you start to kind of hone in on your focus. That's the main thing that's happening now. And you can fall out of access. Now, people get confused about this and they'll be like, oh, well, like I'm only in access concentration if I'm in access concentration for like the whole time I'm sitting. No, that's very deep, stable access concentration, what you're describing. That takes time to develop, usually, unless you're just a real natural at this and you come to it easily, which not many people do. So it usually takes time. Rather, in any given moment, that the breath or whatever your meditation object is the main thing that's in your attention. It's in the foreground of your attention, and everything else is in the background. It might be grabbing you, might be trying to pull you back into it, right, and pull you out of your focus. And that happens. We fall out of access, and then we have to remember to come back, return to the breath, be with the breath. The breath might not yet be the main thing in our attention while we're with it, right? It might be moving, it might be 50%, then 30%, then 20%, and it's moving over here, and then this grabs me there. Practice is dynamic of concentration. My experience of when I'm getting deeper in it, it becomes dynamic. And at some point, we become so focused on our subject that it just is the main thing we're focused on. More than 50% of our attention is on the breath. It's got the gravity of our attention, and there's a well there. There's a gravity well. We want to put more of our attention into it, right? There's a sense of really being interested now in the breath, in access concentration. It's called access concentration traditionally in the Buddhist tradition because this is the place from which you access the jhanas. Our earliest Buddhist teachings do not mention access concentration. This is a later development in the early Buddhist school, like 1,000 years or so after the Buddha's lifetime. So you imagine 1,000 years of Buddhist dudes primarily. There were women in the earliest Buddhist order, but at some point it got too conservative and ossified and lost its radical edge and became all these dudes meditating in monasteries, trying to probably out meditate each other. And then they developed this ridiculous tome. It's like a giant meditation manual called the Visuddhimagga, or the Path of Purification. And in that tome is a definition of what's called access concentration in the section on concentration. There, they begin to define this state in which you have to get to before you can get into the jhanas. So that's access concentration from the traditional standpoint. But what object you use to get into access, there are many. In the Visuddhimagga itself, they describe 40, and I doubt they caught them all, Hopefully that Pokemon reference did go captured by someone. Yeah, access concentration. What is access concentration? Another way of looking at access concentration is it's one of the five jhana masteries. One thing you have to be able to do if you want to master the practice of meditation is you have to be able to access the states that you want to get into, to put it simply. So, in access concentration, we're accessing whatever it is that we're focusing on. And then from there, we could get absorbed in it, right? Because how I'm describing this, if you want to put it in math terms, access is greater than 50%. When you have more than half of your attention with something, you have access to it, and it has access to you. And then you can start to become more and more absorbed, closer and closer. Really, this is the movement. There's a visual movement. I've been developing this meditation app recently called Kasina, in which there's just a visual orb. You look at the orb on your monitor, and you can move it. So as this user, you can move it in. It comes closer to you, and as it comes closer to you, right, the circle fills up the whole screen. You become one with it. You merge with the object. You become one with the breath in the same way, with love, or with the body, or the earth, or who knows, with not knowing. And you become one with the state that you're focusing on. That's jhana. And the process of jhana 1 through 8 describes the evolving relationship that you then have with this merger. At first, the merger is blissful, right? First jhana, the initial merger. Think about first love. It's like spring. This is the time of just intensity, first beginnings, magical, boom, fireworks. And at some point that chills out as we get to know each other, and then we become a little bit more at ease, and we realize we want to just be more focused. We move into the second jhana and so forth. It moves through this pattern, the jhanas. But so we have to be able to access something that can bring us into this process, where we can bring us into this merger. And I think it's interesting that the Visuddhimagga says there are 40 objects that work for this, because that implies there are many things that don't also potentially. And I have a question about this. I have maybe a different opinion than the early Buddhists. I think anything could actually bring you through this. But why would you want to become one with terror? And could you handle being one with terror and be okay being terrified? Some people love horror movies. I've never understood this. I feel like life is horrific enough. But like some people, they watch horror, maybe you're one of them. You watch horror movie and you just feel elated or something. It's like, oh my gosh. And it's like, yeah, that's like first jhana, through the doorway of horror or terror. Maybe. Yeah, I'm open to that. It's just not my door. It's not my doorway.